If you accept this silent humiliation, you've already lost. There is a kind of defeat that doesn't make noise. It doesn't come from failure. It doesn't come from weakness. It comes from silence. Not the peaceful silence of a disciplined mind, but the silence that suffocates the truth you are too afraid to say. The kind of silence that feels like dignity on the outside, but feels like slow poison on the inside. Most people don't see it happening because it doesn't come with insults, arguments, or humiliation in front of others. It happens behind the eyes, inside the mind, where the world can't witness it, but you can feel every second of it. You already know the feeling. That moment when someone crosses a line and instead of speaking, you swallow it. That moment when you give more than you should, receive less than you deserve, and pretend it's fine. That moment when you protect someone else's comfort by sacrificing your own self-respect. You smile on the outside, but something breaks on the inside, and every time you accept it, the break becomes permanent. You don't lose when someone disrespects you. You lose the moment you decide to stay silent, even when your soul is screaming inside. That is the humiliation no one talks about. The humiliation that doesn't expose you publicly, but erodes you privately. Society has trained you to believe that staying silent is maturity, that enduring everything without reacting is strength, that avoiding conflict is wisdom. But all of that is only true when silence is a choice made from power, not from fear. The silence you choose because you are unbothered is noble. The silence you accept because you are afraid is the beginning of self-destruction. The Stoics never preached weakness disguised as virtue. They preached clarity. They preached inner sovereignty. They preached the power of being unshaken, not unnoticed. Marcus Aurelius didn't write pages of meditations to teach men how to be passive. He wrote them to teach men how to be unruled by the expectations of others. The hidden tragedy is that most people do not even realize they are being humiliated. They think they are being reasonable. They think they are being peaceful. They think they are being the bigger person. But there is nothing noble about abandoning yourself. Every time you stay quiet to keep the peace, you create a war inside yourself. Every time you accept disrespect to protect an image, you fracture your identity. Every time you minimize your own pain to avoid discomfort, you train the world to walk over you without consequence. And here is the truth no one wants to admit. The world does not respect what you tolerate forever. The world slowly learns to treat you exactly as you treat yourself. The worst defeats are not loud. They happen in silence, repetition, and habit. You stop asking for what you need. You stop defending what you believe. You stop showing who you really are. You don't break in one moment. You dissolve slowly, one act of self-betrayal at a time, one swallowed truth at a time, one quiet humiliation at a time. The more you accept it, the more your mind adapts to it, until humiliation feels normal and dignity feels dangerous. That is the point where the soul begins to rot, long before the body ever shows a sign. You don't need to scream to reclaim your power. You don't need to be violent, angry, or dramatic. You just need to stop betraying yourself in silence. You need to choose the kind of strength that doesn't depend on being liked. You need to hold the line, even if no one sees it. Because the truth is simple. The first person you owe loyalty to is the one who lives inside your own chest. The world may not hear your silence, but your soul does, and it keeps the score. Silent humiliation is not about being insulted, shouted at, or publicly shamed. Those wounds are visible. They demand a reaction. What makes silent humiliation far more dangerous is that it disguises itself as emotional maturity, patience, or even love. It's the kind of humiliation that doesn't attack your reputation. It attacks your identity. It teaches you to lower the volume of your voice, the weight of your needs, the clarity of your boundaries, until you no longer recognize the person who lives inside your own decisions. Silent humiliation begins the moment you decide that your comfort, your truth, your dignity, or your emotional safety is less important than someone else's approval. You convince yourself that staying quiet is the wise choice, the peaceful choice, the adult choice. But deep down, you know it is the fearful choice, the one you make because the cost of confrontation feels heavier than the cost of self-betrayal. And that is exactly how this humiliation works. It trains you to believe you are doing the right thing while quietly destroying the foundation of who you are. There is always a reason behind the silence. You don't stay quiet because you don't care. You stay quiet because you're afraid of what will happen if you speak. You're afraid of losing people. You're afraid of being misunderstood. You're afraid of being labeled dramatic, ungrateful, difficult, or selfish. You fear the consequence of truth more than the consequence of submission. And the tragedy is that you can hide that fear from others, but you can never hide it from yourself. Psychology calls this self-silencing, a survival habit that begins when someone learns that speaking their truth leads to rejection, punishment, or emotional withdrawal. Over time, truth becomes a risk and silence becomes a shield. But that shield slowly turns into a cage because every unspoken truth becomes a weight you carry alone. And the more you carry, the heavier you feel until the world sees you functioning but never feels the storm happening inside your mind. The danger is not in silence itself, but in what that silence teaches the world. When you keep accepting treatment that hurts you, whether in relationships, work, family, or friendships, you are not just enduring it, you are validating it. People repeat what they can get away with. The world learns how to treat you based on what you protect, not on what you feel. When you don't defend your worth, you slowly become someone who appears not to have any. Silent humiliation is not just emotional, it becomes spiritual. You start losing the ability to look at yourself with pride. You stop trusting your own instincts. You feel the pain, but you can no longer justify why you allow it. So you tell yourself stories to make it acceptable. It's not that bad. It will get better. I don't want to start a fight. Maybe I'm overreacting. These phrases are not wisdom. They are anesthetics. They don't heal the wound. They numb it long enough for it to go deeper. The Stoics warned about this, not in modern language, but in truth. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Silent humiliation steals that mastery. It convinces you to become a prisoner inside your own life, waiting for a moment when things magically change on their own. But nothing changes until you change. Silence is not neutral. It always serves someone, either the situation that hurts you or the person you are trying to become. This is why the first step is not to speak louder, but to stop lying to yourself about why you stay quiet. When you admit the real reason, fear, guilt, attachment, or conditioning, you finally gain the power to break the pattern. Because you can't defeat a prison, you refuse to acknowledge you're inside. And the moment you name the humiliation, it loses its invisibility. Silent humiliation doesn't always look like disrespect. Sometimes it looks like responsibility. Sometimes it looks like love. Sometimes it looks like loyalty. That is why most people stay trapped inside it for years. Not because they are weak, but because the humiliation is disguised as something admirable. You don't recognize the poison when it's served inside something you were taught to value. There are three major forms of silent humiliation that almost no one notices until it's too late. And each of them trains you to tolerate less than what you deserve while believing you are being a good person. The first is the adaptation trap. This is when you constantly shrink yourself to make others comfortable. You adjust your tone, your needs, your expectations, your personality, your dreams, just to avoid displeasing someone. You become flexible, not because you are wise, but because you are afraid. You don't want to be too much, too intense, too honest, too direct, too inconvenient. So you slowly erase the parts of you that might cause friction. People applaud you for being easygoing, but deep down, You know you're not being yourself. You're being a version designed to be tolerated. The second is the silent exchange. This happens when you give more than you receive, and you do it quietly, hoping that eventually someone will notice and reciprocate. You help, you listen, you support, you show up, you understand, you carry emotional weight that was never yours. And you keep doing it because you don't want to appear selfish. The humiliation here is not in serving others. The humiliation is in doing it without being seen, valued, or respected. You keep investing in people who treat your loyalty like free labor, and each time you stay silent, you send the message, "You can keep taking, I won't ask for anything back." That's not kindness, that's emotional bankruptcy in slow motion. The third is competence punishment. This one is the most hidden and the most dangerous. It happens when the more capable you are, the more you are exploited. People start expecting your strength, not appreciating it. They stop thanking you and start assuming you will fix everything. You become the person others depend on, but no one defends. The person everyone trusts with their problems, but no one protects from overload. You are celebrated in public, but taken for granted in private. And because you are strong, silent, and reliable, no one thinks you need help. Your silence becomes the proof that you can handle everything, even when you are slowly collapsing inside. These three forms of humiliation are easy to miss because they don't involve insults or cruelty. They involve praise, dependency, and emotional confusion. You start believing that being needed is the same thing as being valued. But the truth is harsh. People can use you without hating you. They can admire what you do and still never consider what you feel. They can benefit from your strength and never give you space to rest. And as long as you stay silent, nothing changes. The Stoics never taught self-sacrifice without consciousness. They taught clarity of value, alignment with integrity, and the courage to stand firm, even when the world misunderstands you. Marcus Aurelius didn't write about shrinking to be accepted. He wrote about standing rooted in what is right, even if it makes you stand alone. Silent humiliation becomes permanent, not because people are cruel, but because you refuse to treat yourself as someone who deserves better. Once you identify the form of humiliation you are accepting, the illusion breaks. You stop blaming others. You start reclaiming the space you abandoned. Because the moment you see the pattern, you can no longer say you don't have a choice. You just have a decision you haven't made yet. And that's where the shift begins. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with recognition. People don't stay silent because they don't know what to say. They stay silent because the truth feels more dangerous than the humiliation. Silence is rarely about peace. It's about survival. And every time you choose silence over honesty, you are not choosing calm. You are choosing captivity. The prison is not external. The prison is built in the mind. And what keeps the door locked is fear. There are 4 internal forces that keep a person accepting silent humiliation even when they know something is wrong. The first is the fear of abandonment. You would rather lose your dignity than lose the person who causes the pain. So you convince yourself that staying silent protects the relationship, even when the silence is slowly killing your identity inside that relationship. You don't want to be left. You don't want to be replaced. You don't want to be alone. So you minimize the disrespect to protect the connection, not realizing that a connection that requires self-betrayal is already broken. The second is the addiction to approval. You grew up believing that good people are easy, agreeable, selfless, and always understanding. You were conditioned to think that any form of emotional defense is aggression, that having standards makes you difficult, that expressing pain makes you dramatic. So you stay silent because being liked feels more important than being respected. You act like a mirror, reflecting what others want instead of being who you truly are. But approval is a drug. The more you depend on it, the more you lose the ability to breathe without it. The third force is identity confusion. When you stay silent for too long, you stop knowing whether your silence is patience or fear. You stop recognizing whether your decisions are coming from strength or from habit. You start doubting your own perception. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe I should just accept things the way they are. This is not clarity. This is internal erosion. The less you speak, the more you question your right to speak. The less you express, the more you believe your emotions are invalid. Silence becomes self-erasure disguised as calm. The fourth is emotional debt. You feel guilty for wanting more because you remember what others did for you in the past. You stay quiet because you don't want to seem ungrateful. You compromise your boundaries because you feel you owe someone your loyalty, even when they are no longer loyal to your well-being. You keep paying a debt that no longer exists, using your dignity as currency. Modern psychology has a name for this: learned submission. The idea that suffering in silence is a form of maturity, but the Stoics never taught that. They taught emotional neutrality, not emotional invisibility. They taught control over reactions, not the erasure of the self. They taught courage, not compliance. Seneca didn't say, accept everything. He said, choose what aligns with reason and reject what destroys the soul. The truth is simple. Silence is not always strength. Sometimes silence is a sign that you are negotiating your value with the world. And every time you do that, you lose a little more of what makes you whole. You don't need to shout. You don't need to fight. But you do need to decide that your inner voice matters more than external comfort. When you stay silent, you think you are avoiding a problem, but the problem doesn't disappear. It moves inward. It builds resentment. It turns into exhaustion. It becomes emotional corrosion. And one day it erupts, not as power but as collapse. The real danger of silent humiliation is not the moment it begins. It's the moment it feels normal. And once humiliation becomes normal, dignity becomes a luxury you no longer believe you deserve. There comes a point where staying silent is no longer about avoiding conflict. It becomes a direct act of violence against your own integrity. Silence stops being protection and turns into self-abandonment. You don't just lose your voice, you lose the part of yourself that believes you are worthy of being heard. And that is the moment the Stoics would call the true beginning of inner collapse, because a person can survive external injustice but cannot survive internal betrayal forever. The Stoics never glorified suffering. They glorified strength. They didn't teach people to endure everything, but to endure only what aligned with reason, virtue, and inner freedom. There is a moment where your silence stops being an act of wisdom and starts being a confession. I don't believe I have the right to resist this. That is the moment the humiliation becomes spiritual, because it reshapes your identity from the inside. You begin to believe that what hurts you is normal, that what disrespects you is deserved, that what breaks you is unavoidable. And once the mind accepts humiliation as reality, the body follows. Marcus Aurelius led an empire, commanded armies, made decisions that affected millions, but he wrote more about self-governance than world governance. Because he understood something most people never learn. If you do not protect your inner sovereignty, you are already conquered, not by others, but by yourself. The real enemy is not the person who disrespects you. The real enemy is the voice in your head that says, stay silent. It's safer that way. But Stoicism is not passive. It is precise. It doesn't teach you to fight everything. It teaches you to refuse what violates your nature. It teaches you that peace without self-respect is just paralysis with a beautiful mask. It teaches you that tolerance without boundaries is not strength. It is self-erasure disguised as kindness. And it teaches you that a person who refuses to defend their values will eventually lose the ability to live by them. No Stoic ever said, accept humiliation. They said, accept what you cannot control. Adige, silent humiliation is not uncontrollable. It is sustained by one choice, your silence. The moment you refuse to accept treatment that contradicts your worth, you are already living as a Stoic. Not because you are aggressive, but because you are rooted. Not because you shout, but because you no longer bow. The turning point doesn't come when the world changes. It comes when your standard changes. When you stop asking, how do I make them treat me better? And start asking, why am I still in a place where I need to beg for basic respect? The day you stop justifying what harms you, the cycle ends. Not because the world suddenly becomes fair, but because you finally become unwilling to participate in your own diminishment. Stoicism is not about silence. It is about self-command. It is not about accepting everything. It's about separating what is within your power and using that power without apology. And the truth is this: you cannot control how others act, but you always control whether you stay where you are being diminished. A moment will come when the discomfort of speaking becomes smaller than the pain of staying quiet. When the fear of losing someone becomes weaker than the fear of losing yourself. That is the beginning of freedom, not the dramatic kind, the quiet, dignified, irreversible kind. The kind that doesn't need revenge, apology, or validation, only alignment. And once you reach that point, silence is no longer your prison. Silence becomes your choice, your peace, your strength, because you no longer use it to avoid the truth, you use it to live in it. Breaking the cycle of silent humiliation is not about exploding, cutting people off, or suddenly becoming loud after years of silence. Real change doesn't come from chaos. It comes from clarity. The goal is not to become the opposite of who you were. The goal is to become the version of yourself that never needed to shrink in the first place. The point is not to speak more, but to speak from a place that cannot be negotiated anymore. People often think there are only two options: endure in silence or fight with anger. But both come from the same place: loss of control. The Stoic path offers a third option: calm resistance. The kind of strength that doesn't need to shout, threaten, beg, or explain. A power based on internal alignment, not external reaction. When you shift into this state, you don't destroy anything. You simply stop participating in what destroys you. The first step is naming the truth without justification. You don't need to convince anyone that something hurt you. You don't need to gather evidence, build a case, or prove you're right. The moment you say, "This is not acceptable for me anymore," the humiliation ends, not because the other person agrees, but because you stopped agreeing with your own silence. Self-respect is not a negotiation. It starts the moment you stop asking for permission to have it. The second step is detaching your dignity from other people's reactions. You can speak calmly and still be rejected. You can set a boundary and still be criticized. You can walk away and still be called selfish. None of that defines you. The Stoics taught that dignity comes from virtue, not validation. Your worth is not confirmed by applause, and your boundaries are not invalidated by someone's discomfort. The moment you stop needing others to approve your strength becomes real. The third step is learning to disappoint others without abandoning yourself. Every act of self-respect is going to look like betrayal to someone who benefited from your silence. You have to be willing to let people misinterpret you. You have to accept that protecting your peace sometimes means losing the role you played in someone else's life. This is the part most people avoid, not because they can't speak up, but because they can't handle not being seen as good. But good is not the same as whole. And if being good requires being broken, it's not goodness, it's obedience. The fourth step is emotional neutrality, not coldness, not anger, just refusal to internalize the behavior of others. When someone disrespects you, you don't absorb it, you observe it. You don't ask, why did they do this? You ask, why am I still here? That shift turns confusion into decision. Because the truth is simple, you cannot control who they are, but you always control what you choose to allow. This is where Stoicism rises above modern self-help. It doesn't tell you to react. It doesn't tell you to fight. It tells you to govern yourself so completely that no one else has power over your internal state. When someone crosses a line and you respond calmly, not to defend your ego but to protect your identity, that is the highest form of strength. Not loud, not dramatic, just undeniable. The final shift is understanding something most people never realize. You do not need to prove your worth, only stop discounting it. You don't need to force respect. You just need to stop accepting disrespect. You don't need to demand love. You just need to stop begging for it through silence. You don't need to expose the people who harmed you. You just need to stop giving them access to the parts of you they never valued. This is how the cycle ends. Not with revenge, not with explosion, but with quiet certainty. The kind that doesn't ask, what if I lose them, but asks, what if I lose myself by staying? The moment that question becomes louder than the fear, you are already free. Not physically maybe, but mentally, spiritually. And from that point forward, you stop surviving relationships, jobs, friendships, and situations. You start choosing them. Because once you finally understand your worth, silence becomes a weapon, not a wound. There is always a moment when everything changes, not because the world becomes kinder, not because someone finally understands you, but because your silence becomes too heavy to carry. The red line is not a dramatic scene. It is not a breakdown. It is not a scream. It is the quiet moment when your mind finally admits what your body has been feeling all along. This is no longer about patience. This is about self-destruction. That is the point where silence stops feeling noble and starts feeling poisonous. And once you see it, you can never unsee it again. The red line is crossed whenever your silence costs you more than your honesty would. When the price of holding your truth becomes higher than the consequences of speaking it. When you realize that staying quiet doesn't protect peace, it protects the illusion of peace. And illusions always collapse, whether you question them now or they explode later. The Stoics taught that suffering becomes unbearable not when it becomes intense, but when it becomes purposeless. Silent humiliation becomes unbearable the moment you no longer believe it is keeping things together, and instead recognize that it is slowly tearing you apart. The moment you must never stay silent again is the moment silence begins to shape your identity. When you don't just hide your truth, you start forgetting you ever had one. When you stop defending yourself, not because you're calm, but because you don't think you're worth defending. When you start accepting disrespect, not because you're strong, but because you no longer believe you deserve anything better. That is not emotional maturity. That is spiritual suicide. The world will always give you reasons to shrink. It will tell you not to make a scene, not to be difficult, not to complicate things. It will tell you to pick your battles, even when the battle is your own soul. It will reward you for staying silent. But every reward for silence is temporary, and the price you pay for it is permanent. Because every time you stay silent when you should speak, you are training your mind to accept emotional starvation as a normal diet. The red line is not a rule the world teaches you. It is a rule you must create for yourself. It sounds like this. Anything that requires me to betray myself is already too expensive. If you need to become smaller to keep something, that thing is not meant to be kept. If you need to sacrifice your pride to maintain a connection, that connection is already broken. If you need to silence your truth to be loved, that love is counterfeit. The Stoics didn't preach rebellion against others. They preached rebellion against self-betrayal. Epictetus didn't say, "Fight the world." He said, "First see where you have enslaved yourself." Marcus Aurelius didn't say, "Let no one disrespect you." He said, "Do not let yourself do anything that damages your own soul." The inner violation is always greater than the external one, because once you violate your own values to keep anything, approval, love, security, status, you have already lost more than you think you gained. Your red line must be clear, non-negotiable, and internal. You don't announce it, you live it. You don't warn people, you show them by changing your behavior. You don't threaten to walk away. You walk away when the terms of your dignity are no longer met. And you do it without hatred, without performance, without ego. You do it because your identity is no longer for sale. You will know you've crossed the red line into true self-respect when silence feels like power again, not prison. When walking away feels cleaner than explaining yourself. When your voice returns, not because someone listened, but because you finally stopped silencing yourself. The moment you stop accepting silent humiliation, you stop losing. And from that moment on, every decision you make is no longer about escaping pain. It is about protecting who you refuse to stop being. There comes a moment when the lesson is no longer intellectual. It becomes personal. You've already understood the psychology. You've already seen the patterns. You've already recognized the damage that silence has caused in your life. The question now is no longer, why does this happen? The real question is, who do I choose to be after knowing all of this? That is the final mirror, the point where knowledge turns into responsibility. Silent humiliation only survives through two forces, denial and delay. It's not that bad. I'll deal with it later. I just need to stay calm. But you already know the truth. Nothing changes as long as you keep postponing the moment you choose yourself. You don't need more clarity. You don't need more time. You don't need more signs. You need a decision. The person you are becoming is being shaped right now, not someday. The truth is that every situation that humiliates you in silence has a deeper purpose. It is showing you what you have outgrown. The pain isn't just pain, it is information. It is your identity trying to rise while your habits are trying to pull you back down. That is why the most dangerous part of silent humiliation is not how others treat you. It's how you start treating yourself because of it. You begin to normalize what hurts. You begin to romanticize sacrifice. You begin to think that loyalty to others is more honorable than loyalty to your own soul. But the final realization is this: you don't have to become louder. You just have to become unavailable for anything that forces you to live below your worth. You don't need approval to reclaim your voice. You don't need permission to redefine your standards. You don't need applause to walk away. You only need one thing: the courage to live without the things that require the death of your self-respect. This is where the true Stoic path begins. Not in coldness, not in detachment, in sovereignty, in choosing yourself not as an act of ego, but as an act of alignment, in understanding that the greatest loyalty you will ever practice is the loyalty to the person you are when no one is watching, in recognizing that peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the absence of self-betrayal. If you reached this point of the video, something inside you already knows the truth. This silence is not who you are, it is who you learned to be. But what is learned can be unlearned. What was tolerated can be refused. What was accepted can be transformed into a boundary. The only thing missing is the moment you decide that the pain of dishonoring yourself is finally heavier than the fear of disappointing others. You were not made to live quietly inside a life that insults your potential. You were not made to be small in exchange for temporary comfort. You were not made to shrink so others could expand. You were made for clarity, for courage, for truth spoken without shaking, for self-respect that doesn't need validation. For a life in which silence is no longer a cage, but a kingdom you rule from within. This is not the moment to agree with everything you heard. This is the moment to act, not loudly, not dramatically, not for revenge, but because you finally understand that the only person who pays the price for your silence is you. So now the question is no longer, what if I lose something when I speak? The real question is, what do I lose every time I don't? And once that question becomes clear, there is only one path left. The path of a person who refuses to betray themselves ever again. Not because they are angry, but because they are finally awake.